lockable diffs, licensed body, lighting kit, 110 scale. That all sounds pretty good. Let me show you how Tamiya does a scale crawler. I should say maybe scale crawler. Let's take a look at it. My first Tamiya I think I bought in 1994, and that was not a crawler. Today we have something that's different to anything else on my channel. You buy it as a kit, and well, I built it. My leftovers include some sticker sheets and a bunch of parts on the parts tree still. Given what's available in the market today, it looks familiar, but it's actually quite different to most other things you can buy. For a start, it's mostly plastic and it doesn't weigh much. And Tamiya has a bunch of tricks with their Lexan bodies. They do have a lot of detail, but this whole thing here is part of the Lexan body. It's there's a lot of show here and maybe less consideration for go, but the amount of stickers, it's 60 or 70 little stickers. There's a bunch of individual work here. It took me like a week of evenings to finish this body. And really, when you buy a Tamiya scale crawler or trail truck like this, it really is all about the body. And I was thinking about this. I was trying to think, how do I present this car to you? Because there's a slop galore. It's all plastic. The steering slop is considerable. You know, we even have four-link suspension with a chassis-mounted servo. So you've got steering that's vastly affected by that. It's all a bit of a loose mess. There's no foam in the tires that had to be glued. They're not going to have high traction. If I wanted to spin this video as a complaint letter to Tamiya about this car, it wouldn't be hard. There's a bunch of stuff that I could criticize, given how spoilt we are by the current stuff, even the cheapest of the cheap stuff. That all said, Tamiya has been doing this for decades. There hasn't been a lot of change in decades, but they know what they're doing, and when you buy a kit like this, it's like going to McDonald's in another country. You're still going to find familiar things on the menu. We have a detailed Lexan body covered in plastic. It's been painted with Tamiya paint. I didn't do their suggested paint scheme. I did the paint scheme I wanted to do. The CC02 underneath is fairly standard. It's all modular. It's all plastic except for the metal pairs at each end where your suspension holds onto. It does have some redeeming features, and like these leading and trailing arms, they have a beautiful profile. Like the underbody side of things, it's fairly smooth for going over rocks, but you won't want to be crawling with this terribly much. Trailing, sure. The gearing available, you can make it go quite slow or quite fast, but it depends what you put inside it. Kind of like T-Word's TRX4M, if you want to change the gearing, you've got to pull it apart. The diffs by default come unlocked, and I chose to lock these when I was building it because I decided this little thing would need every bit of help it could get. But now that it's done, I have a very satisfactory little trail rig. And for 200 bucks or so, $250, that's a great deal. Except it wasn't $250. I paid like 600 Australian dollars for this thing. So you've got to kind of like what Tamiya's doing here to get on board, because it's not a small amount of money when you buy these cars. Certainly, if you're in it to build a kit, Tamiya has you covered. It was a pleasant building experience. They include the light kit, although only 2 of the 4 red LEDs. I included another set because I wanted to fill out these pretty lights. But just take a look at the detail in the lights. Remembering this is a Lexan body, we've got plastic all over it. Look at all the attachment points. Everything in here is supplied by the company, apart from the extra pair of red LEDs. So we've got attachments for wiring, we've got door handles. It's all paintable, and I chose not to paint these bits, although you could. It finishes up pretty nicely. I think my biggest bone to pick with the body is just that this bumper, which is finished externally too with Tamiya matte clear, it's gonna get pretty eaten up. You could cut this whole thing off and replace it with a plastic bumper of similar spec, and I think you'd get away with it, because on the inside this thing's doing nothing. It's just bolted on by a couple of JIS screws. You pop that off and actually stick a proper bumper on and just cut this off to fit, and you'd have a much more durable bumper. Same with the rear. You could do that as well. So there's definitely room for that. But while we're looking at the inside of this thing, I will mention, well, look, I had a few thoughts about this. This is beautiful, right? It's detailed, it's very pretty. If you were gonna make this more of a goer rather than a shower, like a shelf queen, you could also just buy this body separately. I'm pretty sure you can do that with Tamiya, and bang it onto any other similar wheel-based car. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And you'll come out cheaper and with a better base for crawling. This does have a centrally mounted 540 motor, and the one I've just referred to there has a 390 from RGT. But it's a very capable, cheap thing, and it or something like it, they're available for like 130 bucks, and they work just fine. If you're going to buy the Tamiya itself though, you are in for some good news. There's not a single Phillips head screw on this thing. People say Phillips head, but it's actually Japanese industrial standard, JIS, and it's denoted with a little dot on each screw. Every bit as reliable as a hex head, and arguably more so. This is actually quite hard to strip if you're using a JIS driver, and you can buy this from a hardware store. So I have actually no problems with the Phillips head looking screw set, because the JIS hardware is actually quite good. The weight balance is fine as long as you don't use a humongous battery. The battery cage is in the back, and it'll take a large battery. I'm going to put a small battery in today for my testing here, but there's no bottom in this cage, so I'm going to need to improvise my own strap here. The battery retention is achieved through a single pin that comes off in this little top here, and that works fine for a big battery or like a NiCad stick pack or a nickel metal hydride stick pack. But if you want to use a smaller, like a 2200 milliamp hour LiPo like I will be using, you might need to put a lick of Velcro around just the middle here, because there's a big hole. That's actually okay. The electronics you have to supply as well. I'm using stock parts from my Trailfinder 3 because I replaced its guts. You don't want to go brushless in this, trust me on that. I've used a 45 turn 540, a 55 turn would be appropriate as well. If you really want to go brushless, use like a 1200 kV. Keep it low and slow. It's completely unnecessary because this is just a Sunday trails cruiser. Again, with the limited suspension setup with this steering being that it's chassis mounted servo, which is laid down, but chassis mounted means your steering gets quite badly affected upon articulation on this side. If we removed one of the upper links and somehow crafted in a pound hard, that would deal with that. Out of the box though, I think that was my main disappointment with this. So having more durable bumpers and having the steering actually sorted properly, to me is not a fly-by-night company. They have the resources to do it properly, and I think they really should have here. Those two things, if they were sorted, I think this would actually be a pretty much perfect model for what it is. I'm going to show you some running video as we go. We're not throwing it on my 6 problem course. These tires, they're not crawling tires, they're just for trailing. I have glued them to the rim just with a few dots of super glue, which is all you need. When I went to my first rock crawling competition years ago, the C1 class allowed you to run the CC01 or the CC02, and it would still do fairly poorly compared to a lot of the other stuff if you built it up yourself. Some things don't change with Tamiya, and how Tamiya has always done it is how they seem to still do it. And although even we've got plastic all throughout this thing, there is a little bit of metal here and there, but this is not a high performance car. I think my only real contention looking at this thing overall is a question of price. I think you pay too much. You do get a model experience, a model building experience, where you can assemble the thing and look, getting the actual chassis done, even though it's not particularly stiff. It says on the box it's got excellent stiffness, but it really doesn't. If you were comparing it to like a 1/12 scale from RGT or similar, it's okay to pay 50% more than what they pay, even 100% more for registered, developed stuff. These guys do this in-house and they always have. And, you know, respect where it's due. They're responsible for a lot of good in the hobby. But there's a little bit of laurel sitting, it feels like. Just having looked at so many other cars over the last year or two with you guys here, this is a basic unit. It's a basic unit. It is pretty, but it's basic. If you can get this thing on 50% off somehow, if you manage to find a good sale, this could be worth it for either the nostalgia or the experience of building it yourself. Because this body alone will keep you busy for a while. There's a lot of work in it. But if you're looking for a trail running machine that won't break the bank, for me the value isn't there. But the way Tamiya does their models, I can appreciate why they ask the price they ask to a fair extent. I just wish it was a bit cheaper given the limitations. Look, it certainly is a pretty vehicle. And once you do it up with some stuff on the roof if you want, I think it will be rewarding to drive on trails. Given beauty is in the eye of the beholder, if this thing appeals to you, get your hands on one. Look at it. Look out for a sale though, because I think the full price is quite a lot to ask given the limitations of this machine. And it is certainly not a rock crawler so much as a off-road terrain capable trailing rig. It really is a plaything though. It's not a serious toy like some of the other models here. But for a nostalgic trip, I suppose, and if you like the body, yeah, go grab one. I have no link in the description that takes you to any sponsored content for this. I paid full price for this thing. I guess I'm happy to have it on my shelf, but it's not going to see a lot of wheel time, I suspect. But for what it is, I think I'm just going to enjoy it, and I'll get it out occasionally. Throw me a line. Well, I just took this thing out for a drive to get some B-roll for this video, and just also to take it for its first proper drive. That was the maiden run. So you just got to experience that with me. In my little rant before, I suggested it was not worth the money, potentially. But I looked it up and I paid 322 Australian dollars. That's a much better value proposition, because now you're talking about a car that you can gear down, and it is a little bit fast. I'd like to gear it down to shade, so it doesn't need to be as fast as it is, because it's not capable to handle well at speed. So drop it down. It comes with a 16 tooth pinion. Stick a 13 on, I think, and you'll be happy. For that money, considering you get the building experience, you get the modeling experience, another 60 or 70 bucks, and you've got all the electronics. So make it what, 400 Australian to 440, including paints, don't forget. And you've got a week of modeling, of casual evening modeling, not going hard at it. I don't know how many hours it'd be, but it varies. Some people are faster than others, and I kind of had to make myself finish this, because I finished the bottom pretty quickly after I got it, like last September. And the body's just been sitting there for ages. It took me so long to get it done. I didn't particularly enjoy that part of this build, but having just driven it now, it's already grown on me. I didn't mention it's got oil-filled shocks. I was busy carrying on about the links, but look, I've put decent basic electrics in it, and I can give you the links to those in the description. You will get a reasonable trail experience with this thing. It's not going to be really a crawler, and I would suggest you lock the diffs, because it's really going to struggle otherwise. These tires aren't great. But the good news is they're fairly standard, so you can swap these wheels out with a minimum of hassle. From memory, I don't think they had hexes. It's been a while. No, but the wheels take a pin, so you'd need to supply your own nut and then get shallow wheels on there. But you could definitely do it. It'd be pretty standard, and you know, for a trail car, particularly when you remember you get the build experience, and if that's something you want, not a bad deal. If you want a cheapish car that gives you a nice hard body experience, I've got two other options for you. About $100 less than the Tamiya here is the MN86KS. This is a hard body, it's a kit, and yeah, it was about $100 less. There's your wheelbase, okay? So it's slightly smaller, and the wheels as well The wheels are slightly smaller, but it's a hard body and it's a kit. Quite fun. And you can see the video for that there. Check that out as an option. Now, this is a similar price one to the Tamiya. It's also a polycarbonate, 4 different bodies and colored choices. It's servo on axle and the 4 links, but this thing has a bunch of nicer parts to it that the Tamiya doesn't have, including a considerably more snazzy light kit. And the size for this guy, now you're getting similar. So the length is about the same, the wheelbase is the same, the tires are better, they're slightly bigger. This is a good car. Similar money to the Tamiya, and you don't have to build it. So if you're not into kits, check that video out there. I've got 2 of them actually. One shows you the good side, and one shows you the not so good side of this car. It's not bad. And if you want the kit, yeah, well, the Tamiya is your option. So there you go, 3 cars to look at. Thanks for watching this one. Throw me a like, and I'll catch you next time on RC-TNT. Thanks guys.